live on our custom streaming service. I say screaming, it's streaming service. And if you're tuning in, welcome. And thank you for tuning in. This is VUX World, the podcast where we delve deep into the insights from all of the voice AI and conversational AI industry experts. We pick their brains about how they do what they do so that you can do what you do better. We are broadcasting live now from the isolation, inspiration, inflation, ideation, incubation station. And I'm just going to turn my iPad down because I'm checking on comments and it's broadcasting twice. I'm your host, Kane Sims, as always. And as always, I am joined by the slightly more handsome, probably more educated, and definitely more eloquent Justin Coates.
I don't know about that game, but it's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to speaking with Patricia as well and to continue this live stream. It's been going pretty well. I think we've gotten most of the kinks out.
I think we have. And yeah, we've done some really interesting ones. The last one was good. This one is going to be absolutely epic. So we are joined by Dr. Trish Scanlon, CEO of Soapbox Labs. Tricia, welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is kind of exciting to do this. New medium. This is a new medium for me as well, so this is good. I like it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've been doing it for a little while. We've done 3, I think, in total, and it's been going so well. It's been going pretty well. It's nice. We can do a live broadcast. We can interact with people listening. So we've got Jeff Kinski, who is joining from across the pond in the US of A. So thank you, Jeff. Welcome. Patricia, I don't know. Well, it's people who are interested in voice technology and who are interested in this industry, I think, will be familiar with Soapbox Labs. Potentially, there's people listening right now who might not be. So, for context, do you want to kind of just give a bit of an introduction about yourself and tell us a little bit about Soapbox Labs?
Yeah, sure. So, as you said again, I'm the founder and CEO of Soapbox Labs. We are voice tech for kids. We have spent 7 years now actually building a bespoke proprietary speech recognition system for children's voices. We license our technology to third parties who build products and services and apps and toys for kids, and we help them voice enable those experiences to make them more engaging, more educational, and provide important feedback that you wouldn't otherwise get without voice recognition.
Cool. And we've had, so me and Dustin, I don't know how many podcasts have we done now, Dustin, do you know?
Thousands, tens of thousands.
We've done quite a lot. We've spoke to many different people from across a whole load of different companies, some of the kind of big establishments, some startups, and not necessarily on the podcast, but just in general in this landscape. Sometimes it's not uncommon to find, how can I put this, a hammer in need of a nail or a hammer searching for a nail. So technology that is really cool and really good and, really exciting, but doesn't necessarily solve a specified problem at this moment in time. But with Soapbox Labs, what I absolutely love, and I'll put the link in the show notes to the TED Talk that you gave last year or the year before, whenever it was. But it's really, the founding story is interesting. And the need that so essentially what I'm trying to say is that the company was founded out of the basis of an actual need and establishing a real issue that speech technology can solve. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that story and how you identified that issue, what issue you solve, and how you come across founding Soapbox Labs in the first place?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So I am an engineer by training. So I've a degree in electronic engineering. I spent a couple of years as a software engineer before I started a PhD in 2000 in doing speech recognition. So the PhD was doing audio and visual speech recognition, which meant augmenting noisy speech signals using lip reading, basically getting computers to lip read to augment noisy acoustic signals. So I spent 5 years on a PhD, and I spent time in Columbia University in New York, IBM Research in New York. And then when I finished my PhD, I spent 7 years working with Bell Labs, which was Lucent Technologies when I started, then Alcatel Lucent, and it's Nokia Bell Labs now. So during that time, most of my career was spent on just working on speech recognition, different applications, different areas. But it wasn't until 2013 when I actually was watching my daughter, who was 3 at the time, learning to read. starting that really early stage of phonics, blending sounds and decoding them and recognizing different sounds. And it was through these kind of digital apps. So it was 2013 when, it was the app boom. People are becoming app millionaires and stuff like this. And there was a huge amount of innovation in that space of digital personalized learning paths, adaptive learning. And what I noticed was they were able to do fantastic products, when it was maths or geography or science or whatever they were trying to teach. But when it came to reading or teaching English, let's say, or any language, what I noticed was they had no way of assessing whether what she was saying was correct or whether she was able to recall words. So all they could do is play a sound or a word, and then she'd have to pick from multi-choice which one it was, which is great. And it had like an element of learning to it, but without ever getting the child to think, recall, and pronounce the sound, it wasn't able to assess how her progress was. So she'd made it through these, games and all these things, levels and rewards and all this incentivization to get her to learn, but missing that piece. And to me, having spent my career in speech recognition, it was fairly obvious that it was missing a very essential component, and that is being able to do what a helpful adult is doing, which is sit, you're helping a child to read, you sit alongside them, you listen, correct, prompt, encourage, feedback to the kid, and they progress very rapidly. Actually, if you spend like 15 minutes a day with a child reading aloud and practicing, their literacy rates go up really, really high. Unfortunately, most kids don't get that time, through busy lives, or just they don't have the helpful adult, or they're not in schools, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But for me, it was a case of there's a missing piece to this that's very obvious. And the more I searched, I was actually kind of amazed there wasn't a solution out there in 2013. But the more I dug into it, and I'm a researcher, by training, it became very obvious that the problem was a lot bigger than I kind of first thought. It wasn't just that nobody tried. It's an extremely hard problem when you're dealing with kids' voices as opposed to adults. But is that a good intro to how we got to? That's the founding story. So I kind of started the company from that moment. It was like, okay, we got to tackle this problem. We got to tackle it for the real world as well. That was a big challenge.
And you mentioned that your daughter, rather than actually learning to read, she ended up just basically hacking the game to get a score out of it.
Yeah. She was, because she was progressing, and I was getting all these emails and saying, "Oh, your daughter has reached level 3. Your daughter's reached level 4," and I was like, "Wow, she's like really smart." And then when I quizzed her on it, she'd be like, just like. And when I started watching, I realized the multi-choice was easy to game, essentially. Yeah. Well, not easy, but she was kind of like, okay, I tried that one last time, and that one must be this one. And she'd go off like, so yeah, hacking the game was a talent that she acquired rather than learning to read at that stage. But it just kind of really shone a light on the fact that there is a problem. People are trying to solve it through multi-choice, but that's not the solution. And that area will never progress without a voice text solution. And that was very much it. And also learning, because when you're looking at a child, you see the problem, but you also see the hurdles, right? You see the fact that young kids are never on their own, right? They're never going to go in. A 4-year-old, 5-year-old is never going to sit quietly in a room on their own. They're always going to have parents talking in the background, siblings, TVs, or they're in classrooms, or they're always in, it doesn't have to be crazy noisy, but real world environments. And, watching how they interact with technology is not how adults interact with technology either. It tends to be a bit more crazy or free or, unpredictable if you want. So, the other thing I saw as well out there was that anybody who was pertaining to do speech recognition for kids was working off these really old systems, right? Like something that was developed like 15 years ago, and these quiet environments, or they'd expect a headset mic on a child, a very high quality USB headset mic. I mean, I don't know if you know any 4 or 5-year-old who sit there without breaking it or touching it. So when we looked at this problem, we went, if we're going to address this, we want it to work for young kids, their voices, their speech behaviors. We want to work in real world environments, uncontrolled and without headset mics and all that. And we wanted to work for education, right? So it's not just this off the shelf speech recognition solution either. So we set ourselves quite a few challenges, and that was 7 years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, it's been a while.
And we'll get into what some of those challenges were, because I know that there is some distinct differences in terms of the way that kids talk versus adults, and how that might present complications on the speech recognition side. And we'll kind of get around to perhaps talking about
Sure.
the technology and stuff like that. But first, congratulations on the funding that
Thank
you've
you.
just raised recently. And Jeff had actually commented here as well in the LinkedIn chat about that. So yeah, congratulations on that. What is the kind of like, where are you at now in terms of Soapbox Labs, and then what is the kind of plan for the funding? What's the kind of like the what are you going to do with it? What's the next stage? What's your vision, kind of thing?
Yeah, this is the scaling growth phase of the company now. Like, I mean, we went pretty deep on the technology solution because we wanted a state-of-the-art solution. So we continued to invest. I've often likened companies like ours, like deep tech companies and software, to be more akin to biotech or med tech, where you need to have patient capital. You need to have patience. You can't rush products to market. I mean, anybody, in the AI space will acknowledge that these systems, you can release them quickly, but they'll be fairly mediocre, solutions. We didn't want to be one of those, right? We felt there was enough of that on the market. What we wanted to do was invest deeply in the tech, the proprietary tech, the data, the solutions, the targeting, the kids, the privacy, the architecture. There were so many components of this that we needed to get right, and invest deeply in. And we've raised over $11 million in total dollars now in total to do this. And now it's time to put the foot in the accelerator and scale commercially. So this is kind of the commercial product phase of the company. So we'll always have an element of R&D in the company, quite a strong one. We'll always continue to innovate, but it's definitely more about the scaling of the product particularly in the US and Asia.
And the potential of that is huge as well, isn't it? So if you think about the number of kids on the planet, every single one of them presumably would like to learn to read, or will be on that journey kind of thing. I know that there are some parts of the world where, unfortunately, it's probably not quite as easy as in other parts of the world. But there is a huge number of kids that are growing up learning to read, and schools being really kind of under pressure, growing class sizes, all of that kind of stuff is, the pressure on the education system. And so the opportunity for something like this is huge. Do you want to kind of like explain a little bit for people tuning in, what for the solutions that you have, what would be an example of a use case, just to try and help people put it into context in terms of where this stuff exists and how it realizes itself in practice? Do you want to kind of give us a bit of an overview of what some of the solutions are?
Yeah, I mean, so, reading is a foundational skill in education, right? I mean, you spend a certain number of years of your early education learning to read. And then once you've achieved reading fluency, you can read to learn. And it's really important to get that right up into about the age of 8. Some kids can be up to 10, depending on their own levels and progress. So it's a fundamental skill. It's one of the, often Kofi Annan called it a human right, like, that we need to look after people's education to read, and then they can blossom from there. And you want to fulfill somebody's full potential, get that right first, and you build on it from there. So, there's millions of kids in the world who can't even read a simple sentence. Like, it's really, and then people say, oh yeah, but in the OECD countries, we got it sorted. No, we don't. Like, there's at least 10% of kids, and in some countries, a lot more than that by age 8 aren't reading proficiently. And they're falling behind. The problem is, once a kid starts falling behind, it's extremely hard to catch up. So if you want equality and if you want to level the playing field, you get the reading skills up, and then you can build from there. And what speech recognition can do, because a lot of times it's down to, as you said, overcrowded classrooms, stretched budgets, teachers being asked to do too much. They know what they need to do. And that was the really interesting thing. The research is out there and everybody knows how to address reading. It's not like that's something that we haven't figured out yet. We know there's huge amounts of research to back that up, that that regular practice every day. There's certain, you start with phonics and then you blend and you decode. There's a certain stages. You screen kids early, you intervene early when they're struggling, you catch them. There's loads of great research, but then you give that to a teacher who's already stretched. What are they supposed to do with it? Like, no, they're not getting any new resource. And a new resource when it comes to reading has to be a person. And that's expensive. That's a really expensive way to help teachers to do it. So speech recognition can help by listening. So let's say the child is engaged in a fun kind of animated reading game, like where they have to use their voice, they have to read the words, or maybe they have to blend sounds together to get words, and then, you know, it's like it's part of the game. Or they read a sentence, or maybe they're reading just an interesting book, but to get to the next page, they have to use their voice, and enables, and it can feed back to them the problems they're having, or it can give them a prompt, or can correct them, or they can see it and they could try again. There's so many things, the voice technology behind a reading game, and this applies equally to English language learning or any language learning, that kids can get that immediate feedback. And that's what we were striving to do. So when our goal is to have a service, and what we've delivered is a service that, let's say you're a third-party developer, you have an app or a platform, a Chromebook or on a laptop that kids are interacting. You can have the child read a word, sound, sentence, passage. The audio is sent to us, and in near real time we respond with scores of how well they've said the word, down to the phonetic level, so we can actually be able to feed back to the teacher, the parent, or the child, and that's totally up to the EdTech developer or the education developer, about how that feedback loop happens and what's presented to the child, what's given to the teacher in a dashboard, or what's fed back to the parent. But it's that reinforced learning, is closing the loop on progress, flagging up to the teacher or the parent that the child's having issues in these areas. When they sit down with them, and when they do get that precious one-on-one time with them that is difficult to get, that it's very productive. You know, that they can hone in exactly, and what they can do is then catch kids who are falling behind. Because often what happens in the education system is we have these summative assessments that happen maybe once, twice a year, but you've lost months at that point if a kid has fallen behind. And teachers always say what they would love to spend more time is assessing each kid in the class, just to keep an eye on where they are, but they just aren't given the time to do it, like, or the resources. So this is a tool that can, you know, level the playing field potentially, you know, catching all kids up. Doesn't matter if you overcrowded classrooms or whatever constraints is on that child. And often some kids are lucky enough to have a parent that can sit there and have time with them every day, you know, but a lot of us are busy, more so these days than any time. And, you know, some kids just don't have a helpful adult that can help them at home, and that's important too. And all these, you know, all these areas where the parent doesn't have the native language, you know, there's lots of scenarios where you can bring in some speech technology can be very objective. You know, I mean, it can actually not, there are biases against certain accents or interpretations and stuff if we build it right, which we have done. So all those things can contribute to advancing a child's literacy, which is really important.
And did you mention there that you mentioned EdTech and that people can build with it? I kind of previously I thought that Soapbox Labs created the applications as well as the technology, but what you're saying is that you've got the technology and then you enable that technology for other people to utilize and then build their own stuff.
Well, yeah, we realized way back in the beginning that it was going to take so many resources. Like our team are, you know, we've over 100 years experience in speech recognition technology, more in architectures and software. I mean, so we have a very specialized team, you know, world-renowned experts in this area, like, you know, a highly skilled team that come together and deliver the solution. And what we realized early was that, well, we were also going to develop content and pedagogy, you know, experts and all that, like, we just wouldn't have the resources. So we decided to stick to what we were good at and just stick to one thing, and decided, let's pare it back, because it's really expensive to do that right. And it's very, you know, there's many companies out there that are doing amazing jobs of the educational apps and products out there that, and often a lot of them already have their sales channels into the school districts in the US or in the UK or, you know, all around the world. Are we really going to do that as well? Like, so how about we just license our technology? We deliver a world-class, globally scalable cloud solution, and now and offline as well now, to be able to deliver these solutions to lots of different EdTech providers. So that's, some of them are working on that real emergent reader stage where the phonics and blending and decoding. Others are doing it for fluency, whether it's like simple sentences or right up to 8-10-year-olds when they're reading full passages and they need feedback on their fluency, or the parents and teachers do. We could service them all if we just stick to, the speech tech. And we're now in the entertainment kind of toy space as well. You couldn't do that if you're trying to go all the way to the end user. So it's served us well. We've got 3 real strong verticals, which are literacy, English language learning, and toys, smart toys, basically.
What was your reading kind of situation like, Dustin? Can you remember? Like, I can't really remember that far back from it, but like, I do know that I didn't particularly enjoy it, I don't think. However, I was always kind of, Nintendos and all this kind of stuff, interested in gaming. So I think also there's even an opportunity to get kids who wouldn't have previously kind of been interested in reading to read, because you can apply it in a more kind of a more relevant way.
Gamified way, even, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What was your kind of can you remember your kind of learning to read journey, Dustin, and all that kind of stuff?
I can remember a little bit. I mean, I was pretty lucky that I grew up in a upper middle class household with parents who really put a lot of emphasis on learning how to read. So like you were mentioning, Patricia, not everyone has that.
Yeah, true.
And not everyone has a mother at home. You may have now increasingly two parents out of the household. So yeah, it was a lot of hands-on working with those like reader books and getting that real-time feedback. I'm sure I don't remember all of it, but yeah, certainly there was a person there to help.
Yeah, which is great. Do you know what's very interesting about this? I don't know if you guys learned to read via phonics. You know, it's letter sounds where cat is at. I didn't. I'm maybe too old, or Ireland didn't have it engaged back then. But what I found fascinating when I started this was that actually we teach kids how to read, just how we teach computers how to do speech recognition. So in computers, we train phonemes, right? You've 42 phonemes or 39, depending on which dialect you speak. And you train a system, and that was my training. We train a system, and then guess what? The system can now understand any word, because we just give it a dictionary and we can combine different sounds together to get different words. So when my daughter was learning to read, I was looking at this going, oh, isn't that interesting? We're actually teaching kids like we teach computers to do speech recognition. So kind of made the whole problem even more interesting, to realize it from that point of view.
I think I still read like that.
Yeah, sounding it out. Yeah. Fair.
But Trish, you were talking about your 3 verticals, and it's not just literacy, it's entertainment, it's toys as well, but all focused around kids. You mentioned earlier there's also some challenges around the speech recognition for kids. Yeah. What is it beyond just the environment or sure. That the fact that they're around people? What is about the way that kids speak that makes it more challenging for speech recognition?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, kids are physically very different to adults, right? So they have shorter, thinner vocal tracts and smaller vocal folds. So what happens is then that the voice is physically, if you were to look at it, you think about it, an adult male has kind of lower voice, an adult female tends to be overlapping but higher. And then a child, and the younger the child, it gets further and further away from what an adult voice sounds like. It can just lead to very distinct differences in where sounds appear in the spectrum. And what humans do is we kind of tune into that it's a kid's voice, or just as we would with accents. But when you have built a system and you trained your acoustic models on adult data, it makes it harder to understand kids, and particularly the younger they get, the bigger and bigger these differences are. So what some people attempt to do is to take adult speech and kind of pitch change it, or do some vocal tracks, VTLM, it's called, and things like this. Okay, will never perform as well as getting real training a system on kids' audio. Equally, the child has very different speaking behaviors, right? So they elongate, they over enunciate, they over punctuate, they kind of stop and think while they're talking, and messes so badly with a system that's been trained on adult speech and adult speech behaviors. And then language, we as adults follow language rules more or less, right? Unless it's colloquial. But with kids, even like a 3-year-old, if you think about a 6-year-old, 8-year-olds, they all are learning the language rules as they get older. So how they speak and how they construct sentences is very different. So if you are solely relying on everything you've learned from adults, you can understand how it's going to fall over repeatedly for kids and deliver a really poor experience for them. So when we were looking at this problem in the early days, we had a couple of issues. I talked about the real world environments and headset mics and all these things, but we very much wanted to tackle the area of education first. I mean, like I said, we've using the same underlying technology. We've moved into the smart toys too, but that happened later. In the beginning, we were looking at, well, if you're going to take an off-the-shelf speech recognition system, first, if it works for adults, you're going to have problems, right? Secondly, you're going to take a speech recognition system that's been designed to predict what you're saying and kind of guess and approximate based on what you sound like you said, but also with your language model and all this NLP stuff that's doing a fantastic job when it comes to voice assistants and things like that. But if a child has been asked to say something on a page or read a sentence or a paragraph or identify objects or answer comprehension questions, that technology is basically, square peg round hole. It'll work if you really jam it in there and, but it's not a good fit and it will never perform as well as it should do. And it will never get to the point of being close to a human assessor. And that was really important as well. So that was kind of, there was a couple of many challenges we had to address to tackle this problem, like, with kids and education as well.
Yeah. We'll throw this. If anyone has any questions for Patricia, Shane has said, really interesting. I need to check out VUX a lot more. Yes, you do, Shane.
That's good.
That. Yes, thank you, Patricia. You are enlightening the brand here.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. But what is it that over the course of doing this, you don't need to necessarily reveal the secret sauce as such, but you've identified an issue with general speech recognition systems. You know that there is a need to be filled and a gap that could be served with some proper technology that is specifically created for kids. You've identified the different ways in which kids speak and the differences in how the speech recognition systems can or cannot recognize child voices, etc. What was the sort of journey like in terms of from nothing to now having a system that can do all of this stuff? And what did you need to, did you get like a load of sampled kids data to train something, or like what was the sort of like process like to kind of get it?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about parts of this, and obviously there's certain, as you said, there's certain parts we can't talk about, but so I had worked most of my career, as I said, I did the PhD and I worked in IBM and Bell Labs, and a lot of my learnings during the years were of observing what happens when you build a solution with lab-like data. And lab-like data tends to be your perfect data, right? Your optimized data. And often what people do is, I'll figure it out for the lab-like data, and then I'll make the modifications accordingly for real world. And my learnings during my career before I started this was that you can't do that, right? I mean, they're like two different things. You could spend all your time figuring out in lab-like data and the whole thing will fall apart the minute you introduce real world data to it. So our first challenge was to address the problem of children's data. There's very little of it publicly available. It tends to be data that was collected 15 years ago in quiet environments with headset mics, with kids who are controlled. So there was an adult there controlling the data collection, like because they were trying to get through the problem. Let's get 100 hours, let's get a couple of hours of kids' speech data. And when I was observing my own daughter, both my kids over the years, I was saying, you can't control them, because the minute you stop controlling them, they'll behave differently. You have to let this happen naturally. And rather than, if you think about how you would use a smart assistant, right? You think, I need to get this information from Alexa or Siri. So you kind of straighten yourself up, you kind of gather your thoughts, and you address it in the optimal way to get the optimal performance, because sometimes it fails. Think about how a kid would do that. My 10-year-old will definitely, I've seen her try, she'd go, okay, what do I need? My 7-year-old will just blurt out whatever the hell he wants and then just be constantly disappointed when it doesn't work. So those systems are a long way off being able to understand natural speech, or kind of spontaneous speech if you want. With kids, we had to address that. That was really important because they're not going to conform. We had to work with what we were given as opposed to trying to control the subject. So what we encountered was that anybody out there, any data out there, was all very controlled, very quiet. So we couldn't even start with what was publicly available, which is what people typically do first, right? And then they'll artificially add noise, or they'll try and change it and so on. It's not natural, it's not real. You'll always have problems. You'll reach a ceiling and you'll never get any better than that. That's just the reality of the problem. We've seen this repeatedly. So addressing the problem for us meant real world speech, right? Uncontrolled real world speech. But you know, anybody who knows kids don't work with kids and animals, like, for good reason, because they're really hard to get any form of compliance. You know, they don't care. They get bored so quickly. You know, so look, a lot of what we did was to try and work with that, and it's been many years figuring out how to address that, because you know, we've often encountered people saying, "Oh, but I've like a million samples of all these things." Yeah, you know, of kids speaking. You go, yeah, but it's a million samples of kids saying the same things over and over again. You know, not interesting. Not interesting to build a robust system. So, you know, to be thoughtful about many different aspects of the problem is a lot of where our IP lies. It's understanding at a very deep level. So everybody in the company, we've 22 people in the company now, and you know, everybody's gone on a journey together to figure this out. You know, they are probably one of the few child speech recognition experts in the world now, like, you know, because I don't think any company has spent as much time as us very thoughtfully thinking about the problem, from the data to the acoustic models, to the language, to the behaviors, to the use cases and the applications. And it's been 7 years of being very thoughtful on that. That's now delivered a very robust solution to this problem.
Yeah, that's it's true that when it's interesting how you can kind of gather that kind of data, because you're starting from absolutely nothing, and then it's probably one of the most sensitive areas, kind of, to, you know, you mentioned don't work with kids and animals. Yes, that's because, you know, kids can be unpredictable and do crazy stuff, so can animals, but also there's so much privacy concerns involved in
Huge.
doing anything with kids. And
Yeah.
so I'm assuming this probably isn't the first time you've been asked this kind of question, but
No,
what are the privacy kind of concerns that people have, and how do you kind of work
yeah.
around addressing that?
Yeah, so from the very beginning, right? So in 2013, I reached out to Privo, Privo. They're a safe harbor in the US, and they now do work in Europe as well, to engage with them to help me figure out how we could be compliant. And at the time, there was COPPA in the US, which is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And they had already introduced the concept of audio and video had to be compliant. You have to get consent and things like that. While GDPR was like years off at that point. So we figured out our obligations around this, how we could do this right now. It was not cheaper and it was not quicker to do this. It was actually quite a laborious, expensive process to figure that out. But we reckon, and at that time it was 2013, right? It was the Wild West of data collection. I mean, people were sucking up data. Nobody really understood what the hell was happening, like, you know, why it was happening. And, you know, number one, I understood the value of data from my time in Bell Labs and IBM. But two, I was a parent. So I understood how I would feel about, you know, data and the privacy constraints around that. So, you know, it's very hard. It's very hard to be a small company and you know, try and compete with the big giants and everybody, the tech giants and stuff who are doing this. But we reckoned if we stayed on the right side of this, we would be in a better position down the line to be able to stand over what we do. So we don't have any competing business models. So we don't make money off product placement or search ads or anything like that. Our only revenue source would be from our speech technology. And in that way, we can be transparent in how our data is used, that we won't use it to, the audio data won't be searched, won't be targeted, information won't be taken to target kids or used in any other way other than to improve the speech services, which is really important. So we're probably one of the few independent speech recognition companies in the world now. And we get a lot of people coming to us. Number one, thing we get is that people say, I've tried everything else. I've tried insert big tech name in their, you know, speech to text API. It doesn't work for kids. It's not accurate enough. So, you know, two, we get people coming to us saying, we don't want to have the association where it isn't clear what's happening to the kids' audio data. So what happens often is you may give consent, but people are unaware of what happens. It's not hugely transparent how that data is used. And as you say, when you come to children, it's extremely sensitive. And a lot of brands don't want to be, have the negative association down the line, today or later, if any scandals come out about what happened with the data. So, we've been advocating a lot. We did a submission to the UN along with, an anthropologist, Dr. Veronica Barassi, on digital rights of children, and kind of, put in our a call out to the industry for more transparency when it comes to kids' data. Because I think you can do it. I don't think there's any great loss. We can still progress as an industry, a voice tech industry, while being transparent. People are fine with it. People are smart. They'll read privacy policy, make them simple, make them transparent, and if everybody takes a line road, you're not going to lose the confidence of parents. It's really important for us in the industry to have trust. Trust for accuracy, because people recognize now we're the most accurate speech technology for children out there, but also trust with the privacy, that we're not trying to make money in any other way off the data. And both those things are really important for us, for our brand, and the brand of our clients as well.
And so, changing topics a little bit, obviously you're focused more on the speech recognition, the speech to text side of it, but you work with a lot of companies, with brands that are creating voice experiences for kids. And so I'm sure you picked up a lot along the way there as well. If someone wanted to build something that was targeted towards kids, targeted towards how they interact with voice, how would they go about doing that? And also, does it also depend on the age of the kid? Or are you going to build something different for 3 to 5 year old than you will 9 to 13-year-old?
So the first part we build, let's say in education, it's more about the developmental stage of the child, let's say in literacy, so we've one product that deals with kids up to a certain stage of reading. So when you're doing your phonics, your words, your short phrases, there's actually a certain developmental stage. You use one product. It's an API, it's a RESTful API. So it's a very simple curl command to basically hit the API and get a near real-time response as to the very easy to integrate, was designed that way. And then we have a different API point, and if we work with clients on if they have longer passages and more detail and stuff that their detailed feedback they're looking for. On the education, similarly, we'd have a very simple, on the entertainment kind of for robots and toys and stuff, we have a very simple API endpoint as well. Your question before that was, did I answer
if you're building an experience for kids that you want to tailor for how they interact with things versus how adults do, what are the differences you're going to do there?
So we just do the voice tech. We actually do offer some kind of, we've a lot of expertise in the company, in particular on voice UX. So about how best to, do the voice interaction, how best to feedback. We can help interpret, we can show best practices for children. It is difficult because you're talking about kids aren't as dexterous as adults, and then they tend to get distracted easily. So how do you make sure when they're using their voice that it's, it's the right, they are engaged with the device as well. So we don't build the products, but we do have a lot of experience in it. So we do offer that as kind of consultancy. We are offering a 90-day free access to the API that users can, that developers can contact us now and sign up very quickly and easily, get API access, get some help from the company, a bit of tech support and UX support as well, so they can get up and running very quickly. We do have one client that was up and running in 48 hours, integrated and had it out in the market. So it's very simple in that way to integrate into the technology. There's no great customization needed, particularly for the young kids. Depending if you have a very bespoke solution that you're looking for, we can talk to you about that. But generally speaking, we have very easy access to the technology. So most developers can hook it up and have it up and running very quickly.
Cool. We'll put the links to, obviously we'll put the links to the website and all that kind of stuff in the show notes and stuff. But before we wrap up, if anyone does have any questions for Patricia, please do stick them in the comments on LinkedIn. Anything to do with either the technology or the use cases, drop it in there. One of the things I was kind of curious about, we're talking about helping developers and companies create applications for kids and things like that. What are some of the some of the kind of interesting or novel or kind of like some of your favorite sort of use cases that you've seen the technology be applied to? We've mentioned the helping people,
Yeah.
helping kids learn to read and stuff like that, but you've also hinted at entertainment and toys and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
what's sort of some of the other sort of little bits of examples of how people
An
have applied it?
interesting one was on screening, that, you know, even before a child can read, there's a good bit of research out there, some fantastic research, that you can actually present a child with a number of different pictures, right? And it's called rapid naming. So when they quickly go through the sequence, you can actually predict a likelihood to have reading difficulties like dyslexia in the future before they ever start reading. So you can start intervening with a child 4 and 5 rather than wait until they're 8 or 9. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
Like, you know, for 4 or 5 years, that kid isn't going to suffer like confidence issues. And, you know, there's a lot that comes with something like dyslexia, especially when it's not diagnosed until much later. I love that one. That one's actually been an amazing one. And then on the toy space, simple engagements, like with, you know, asking a child their favorite color, and then the character, whether it's a digital toy or it's a physical toy, being able to recognize what the kid said and continue that conversation and recognize it accurately. That's been really, there's been a lot of attempts at this in the past, and what happens is it gets it wrong more often than it's right, and that's frustrating. But watching a child's face when the animated or the cartoon or the fluffy toy recognizes what they say is kind of magic, like, and it just draws them straight in as a really engaging experience. And if you think about it, it doesn't have to be bells and whistles of technology. It's just something really simple. It could be no screen, nothing other than a hidden mic, like, and have that very simple experience where a child, it's kind of, you know, that kind of magical thing that you wouldn't get without that kind of voice experience built in.
That's good. That it's there's been lots. I was doing a talk the other day about voice technology and the history of voice technology, and found the I can't remember what the dog. Was it Judy? Was it called Judy? The first, was it Judy? I think it was Julie. Julie in America, the toy that was kind of like, it was in 1987 or something, like the first kind of like toy that can sort of speak or something. But thinking about kind of where it's come now and where toys have come now and how kind of interactive toys have become, you know, like my son has got like all kinds of like little bears with lights on, and you know, they most of them talk to him, but none of them at the moment, even though it's been kind of possible, none of them listen.
Yeah, that's so funny. My son had that experience where he got this toy and his granddad had bought it for him, and he was sitting in the back of the car and he just looked so disappointed, and he was going like, he goes, "It can't hear me." And I went, "Oh yeah, because they're so used to the, you know, the Alexas, the Series and all that in the home, hearing them. He doesn't understand what the new toy he just got, like, can't hear him, but could talk to him." Exactly. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So where do you see this kind of going then? What does the future of this technology look like? You hinted at things earlier on in terms of scaling Soapbox Labs and stuff like that, but either within what Soapbox Labs are doing or broadly speaking in terms of speech technology for children, where do you see things heading in the next kind of like 12 months, or 18 months or beyond? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, there's a couple of things we're looking at is languages, obviously, like, you know, that's a key area, but also going offline. I don't just mean offline onto a device that has a very expensive, you know, embedded chip in there. I'm talking about like very cost-effective, cheap chips. You're talking about on the order of a couple of dollars that can do long battery life, high processing, at low cost. Now that opens up the whole smart toy industry, and that's I think something like a $69 billion industry in 5 years. If you doing that and cutting the snips on the whole needing to go to the cloud, that changes everything, right? That changes privacy issues. It changes, you know, how much a battery is drained every time you Bluetooth to the, you know, or to the wireless or something like that in the home. You have a battery that lasts a hell of a lot longer. The cost of the toy doesn't go up, or it's in some kind of manageable range that the toy industry is suddenly interested in this and haven't been interested up to now. That's a game changer completely. Taking it further out past the year or two, you know, we're involved in a partnership now where we're talking about adding video. So now you're talking about, if you think about this, video is like, everybody's not so sure about video, but if it's all processed on device and no video is leaving it, it was just video processing to be able to get expressions or gestures or recognizing the face of the child when they, when engages with the toy, then you open up all these amazing play experiences that don't have the privacy concerns but have huge engagement. That multimodal processing of audio-visual information can open up something really, really interesting. So that's kind of where we see the next couple of years playing out, particularly in the kids space, as well as building on what we're already doing in education and English language learning as well.
Carlos says that physical toys engaging kids in voice entertainment is such a profound experience. Sounds as though he's got some experience with it. I haven't had any experience.
Great. Time to get in touch.
Yeah, exactly. Have you, Dustin, have you had any experience with an interactive talking and listening kind of toy?
I can't say I bought many toys recently, so no experience on my end. No.
It's interesting, but I think the it's definitely kind of heading that way, I think. And it's interesting you mentioned the kind of processing on the edge and not needing the internet connection and things like that. I know that when we spoke to Snips, Dustin, before they were kind of acquired and stuff like that was kind of what they were very heavily kind of focused on. And that's the same was kind of true with them when we spoke to them, wasn't it? Is that they were saying that it kind of just does away with all privacy concerns because it's just there and it goes nowhere.
It's fabulous, and it's only actually in probably the last 12 months that you're beginning to see the price point become into a range that's going to unlock markets like the toy industry. That I think that's a huge one for the next 2 years anyway, for sure.
Wicked. Well, Patricia, this has been absolutely immense. I think that what you're doing with Soapbox Labs is absolutely fantastic. I think that, as I mentioned at the very, very beginning, the fact that it's not a solution looking for a problem, it's actually a genuine solution that solves a real problem. You think about education all over the world. Schools, as we mentioned, schools are all under pressure. I know a few people in my family who are teachers and stuff like that, and they've, over the years, it's just been getting harder and harder and harder because classes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is a good example of where technology can be used effectively and engaging. And I think it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah, the remote learning is massive right now. Like that's going to be the biggest thing for us in the next 12 months, on top of other, is helping to enable those remote learning tools that help them be more engaging than what we're seeing at the moment, for sure.
Wicked. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Patricia, for joining us. Where can people who do want to, if they want to take you up on that free 90-day offer, if they want to kind of find out more about Soapbox Labs and investigate what's going on or use the technology, what's the best way for people to go and do that?
I think you can go to our website, soapboxlabs.com, or contact us at hello@soapboxlabs.com. We can help set you up. Thank you.
Cool. Nice one. Thanks very much. And Dustin, it'll be another one. Is it next week? Same time next week, I think.
Perhaps. Maybe. Let's do it. If we're not already doing it, let's do it. Yeah.
It'll be coming